All right, how is everyone doing today? Welcome to my channel. We do educational videos and we tend to focus on great theories of everything, ancient and modern, mostly obscure, things that you probably haven't heard of, but if you had, and now you have, um, they'll help you with a lot of different things in your life, your paradigm shifting, your awakening to 5D consciousness, your formation of a holistic worldview, and fulfilling your quest for better spiritual, physical, and mental health. Today is the 73rd video that we've done on Daniel Ingram's book called Mastering the Core Teachings of the Buddha. And this book is basically on all things Buddhism, but particularly on meditation, two kinds: concentration meditation, concentration on an object, which confers all kinds of exotic experiences and a lot of bliss, and then insight meditation, opening yourself to your five sense doors for sensations and your mental sensations, and investigating those for the three characteristics of impermanence, dissatisfactoriness, and no self. And by doing that, you move around the stages of insight, and eventually you are conferred wisdom. And this chapter is going on forever, but the chapter is basically on the various models of enlightenment. So different schools of thought within Buddhism and other schools have different ideas of how you can tell whether you're enlightened or not, or how you can tell whether somebody else is enlightened, or what you have to look forward to if you get enlightened. And I believe we're on a section on the, we did the radiance models, and now we are doing somewhat of a, what's it called? A like kind of diversion through the Indian Buddhist concept of the three kayas, and or the three bodies. The three kayas are very close in meaning and implication to the scopes of the three trainings of Buddhism. Those three trainings are morality, concentration, and insight. So morality and the two kinds of meditation. Okay, so we're going to move through this and see where we head here. This is where we, approximately where we left off last time. On a related theme, the Nirmanakaya also relates to the facts of the physiological inertia and biological conditioning of the bodily aspects of emotional life. The mind of an arhat is extremely resilient, but the flesh of mammals, such as humans, works according to the same laws that were in place before. The spacious mental resilience of an arhat has some positive consequences for physical life, but this reliance does not completely transform it. Thus, physical sensations associated with hunger, pain, tiredness, sexual arousal, nervousness, fear, and all the rest are still intimate realities for the living mammalian arhat. When they arise and are not inconsequential, though the points made above in the karma model about seeing things arise and vanish still apply. The Nirmanakaya includes issues of biochemistry and neurochemistry, and all the issues of mental pathology that may go along with these. Another aspect of the perpetual bliss models we just mentioned, and directly related to the Nirmanakaya, are the no pain models, which generally state that fully awakened beings must not feel any pain at all. as how could there be no suffering while there was still pain? Or they state that fully enlightened beings might feel pain, but it would not be pain to them. Or that there would be no possible mental or physiological reaction to that pain. I've had plenty of exposure to some very advanced practitioners, and do I know any that feel no pain? No. Do I know any who would seem to be able to handle any amount of pain and not have any physiological stress reactions to that? No. Is it true that meditative practice can reduce the amount of additional suffering in relation to the pain we experience? Yes, as plenty of even relatively novice practitioners with diseases like cancer have found this to be the case over the years. Suffering can be reduced with deep insights. Is it true that as the field wakes up to the localized nature of perception and the proportion of the painful part of the field gets smaller and smaller, that this can really help put pain into perspective and make for optimal responses to it? Definitely. Do I believe that this can be made limitless, such that any amount of pain for any period would be totally blissful and cause no problems? Not at all. Thus, realism regarding what it means to have been born a mammal is called for, as well as hope that we can make things better by practicing well, but in a grounded way. I call to the stand the case of Channa, the arhat in the sutras, who committed suicide as the pain at the end of his life was too much to bear. And for those interested in reading up on the complexity and controversy of these things, try an internet search for Channa, C-H-A-N-N-A, as well as Godhika, G-O-D-H-I-K-A, and Vakali, V-A-K-K-A-L-I. Further, the Buddha himself suffered from back pain and bad headaches, as mentioned already, and his death from some abdominal malady due possibly to food poisoning was a very painful one. Nanavira Thera is another relatively recent example. The Nirmanakaya bears out the truth so well articulated by Lao Tzu when he talked about dark and light containing one another and difficulty and ease complementing one another. No level of awakening will allow us to pick just our favorite half of physical reality or humanity and eradicate the rest. This simply never happens and is not possible. I think that everyone on the spiritual path should occasionally sit down with a piece of paper and list our favorite half of reality that we imagine or wish would be left if we got fully enlightened. Then list all the aspects of reality that we wish or believe would vanish forever. We should then list the things that we imagine would show up due to realization that are not here now. The differences between these lists often point directly to what blocks the development of wisdom from clear acceptance and understanding of reality. Even arahants and Buddhas have a favorite half of reality as well as dreams about how things could be. So these dreams are not the problem. The difference is that highly realized beings understand directly that both the good, so-called, and so-called bad aspects are of the nature of ultimate truth, including all thoughts about them, and this makes all the difference. These sensations flicker effortlessly and vanish, getting no more or less consideration than they are due. The point I am trying to make here is to include the sensations that make up your world in your practice, and not to retreat into idealized fantasies of what realization will be like, though notice such sensations when they occur. Arahants also have a wondrous understanding of all of this that is unique to them and to Buddhas, called the Sambhogakaya. They know that the full range of phenomenal reality and even the full range of the emotional life can be deeply appreciated for what it is. They see that the world of concepts, language, symbols, visions, magical experiences, with a K, thoughts, and dreams is fundamentally the same as the world of materiality, that they both share the same essential nature from an experiential point of view. The first line of the Gospel of John, in the beginning there was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God, is a nice way to put it. For those who find this phrase too cryptic, I paraphrase it as, from the beginning, concepts, words, dreams, visions, and the realm of thought have always been an aspect of ultimate reality. Further, in some strange way, even the worst of the world has a wondrous richness of texture that can be deeply enjoyed, and a mysterious and sometimes awe-inspiring glory mixed into it. What we were looking for was permeating all the sensations without exception that had made up our world all along. What a staggering irony this is, and what a silent joy it is to discover this at last. This is what is meant by the bliss of nirvana. It is a subtler understanding than that of the nirmanakaya, and in some largely mysterious way does not contradict it. When everything is just happening naturally, something about that feels great. When thoughts and unpleasant sensations are perceived naturally, in their proper proportion, this is a real improvement. As the Tibetans often say, amazing, it all happens by itself. Beyond even this, arahants also understand in real time what is meant by the Dharmakaya, that somehow none of this is them. The Dharmakaya seems to pervade all of this simultaneously, and not be all of this, and be utterly beyond all of this. It seems to be permanent and yet unfindable, empty and yet aware. The Dharmakaya might be called the simultaneous mind, in that sensate phenomena and awareness are known to arise immediately as part of each other. However, for many practitioners, describing the Dharmakaya can lead to attempts to solidify some transcendent and stable superspace that can't ever be found, creating a wild goose chase for those who grasp onto the sense that somehow the Dharmakaya must be an eternally abiding thing or something other than what is going on right now. It can also lead those who wish to escape entirely to try to find a safe space that is totally outside this world into which to vanish. The Dharmakaya is often described using very paradoxical language, though an arahant would know directly what it is pointing to. This is what is sometimes being referred to by extremely confusing phrases such as going beyond birth and death. Samsara is nirvana. The arahant is traceless here and now, true self and no self. Interestingly, the Nirmanakaya also relates directly to both what is sometimes meant by true self and no self. There is something beautiful and yet tragic in this, a dark comedy, as a friend of mine put it. To even say that the Dharmakaya is a very subtle understanding makes no sense, as the understanding of Dharmakaya arises more from what is absent, dualistic fixation and misperception, rather than a sense of the presence of something. On the other hand, the presence of everything bears witness to it, as it is intrinsic to all phenomena and not some separate thing. Should someone, and you know who you are, Tom, I don't know who that is, but read this and think, this deluded ex-bastard is articulating the vile heresy of the Atman Buddhism, implying some absolute true self, some truly permanent something. Know truly in the depths of your not self that I am not, so be at ease. All three realizations, Nirmanakaya, Sambhogakaya, and Dharmakaya, are accessible to the Arahant at any time by the mere inclination towards them, which is to say these perspectives arise dependent on causes in their own time. They are three complementary perspectives on the same thing. It is like being able to see the validity of the perspective of all three people in the classic Taoist painting called The Vinegar Tasters, which Confucius and his laws for living in the world relating to the Nirmanakaya, Lao Tzu, and his deep appreciation of life relating to the Sambhogakaya, and the Buddha and his emphasis on nirvana and going beyond suffering, birth and death relating to the Dharmakaya. Most people think of this painting as a Taoist slam on the other two traditions, but I think that the deeper meaning here is much more useful. The teaching of the three ultimate dharmas of materiality, mentality, and nirvana that I articulated earlier is closely related to the Indian Buddhist concepts of the three kayas, or aspects of the fully enlightened condition. The Nirmanakaya relates to form, the Sambhogakaya relates to the enjoyable, quiet, and spacious peace of the fully enlightened mind that unifies the mental and physical into the same field of experience, and the Dharmakaya relates to nirvana. Were only the Nirmanakaya true, we might be tempted to say unitive experiences are the answer, and that we are the whole field of experiences, or of experience. Were only the Dharmakaya true, we might be tempted to say crazy things such as that transcendent experiences are the answer, that we create and know the whole field of experience, that we do not exist, and that we are the deathless or God. None of these frameworks can clearly explain the experience of realization on their own. Presenting the three kayas also allows me to continue to hammer relentlessly on the point about people wanting to find some spiritual reality other than this one. The huge temptation when walking the spiritual path is to try desperately to find a way to get the magical and wondrous ease of the Sambhogakaya and the seemingly transcendent luminosity of the Dharmakaya, while secretly hoping that the down-to-earth, mundane, intimate, visceral, vulnerable, and often embarrassing Nirmanakaya will just crawl away and die, or at least radically reform itself. The Nirmanakaya is often treated as though it were the bastard stepchild of the fully enlightened condition, but you can't have one without the others. Intimacy with reality is bought at the price of attaining transcendence. Transcendence is bought at the price of attaining intimacy with reality. These inescapable facts should not be forgotten. The all too common temptation of those who advertise and sell spirituality is to sing the praises of the Sambhogakaya and Dharmakaya while trying to gloss over the profound yet down-to-earth implications of the Nirmanakaya. Buyer beware. If awakened beings didn't feel the fullness of their humanity and the ordinary world, compassion for themselves and others would be completely impossible. From a Tibetan point of view, it is because awakened beings progressively lose their artificial defenses against this realm that they have no choice but to become bodhisattvas, bringing awakening to this material realm, which brings us nicely to our next model. That is called the immortality models of awakening. The immortality models are significantly more prevalent in Tibetan Buddhism than they are in other strains, though they also appear in Pure Land Buddhism and elsewhere. While all strains of Buddhism, on the one hand, categorically deny immortality as the goal, based upon the standard tenets of Theravedian logic, most of them turn around and sell immortality like used car salesmen. So many Buddhists want to be up in the heaven called nirvana as empty yet separate beings who don't exist and yet live forever as bodhisattvas saving the world. That they can hold this profound set of contradictions in their fuzzy little brains with such uninquisitive ease is truly award-worthy. While there are many excellent points in the Bodhisattva vows, they This is yet another case of bait and switch, where the results will be a bit more down to earth than most people are bargaining for, and where people don't bother to read the fine print they were told to read. However, many Buddhists who don't understand emptiness viscerally for themselves become so brainwashed into the ideal of becoming amazing superheroes that they readily give up the notion that they could really understand anything in this lifetime in exchange for the dream that some zillion lifetimes down the road they may get to be spiritual superstars. However, as their mentality can be essentially like people who have bought into some weird cult, I don't recommend trying to convince them otherwise, as it generally just pisses them off, as whole massive concrete spiritual identities can be created just by buying into that beautiful dream. Just do your practice, take care of your own understanding, awaken, and then see what you can do from there. Now, as before, there is some weird and slippery truth to the immortality models on two fronts. First, from a technical point of view, what is traditionally called the deathless, nirvana, Tao, void, Buddha nature, etc., is often referred to as indestructible, timeless, etc. This is because it is referring to either that non-experience of fruition, which is like a gap in the time-space continuum, which is indestructible only because it can't be experienced and thus falls outside the ordinary laws of causality, which is obviously a totally unsatisfying thing to build a sense of immortality on. Or B, some universal luminous aspect of utterly transient phenomena, and thus not to anything specific or permanent in any conventional sense. The second option means that it is always true that sensations arise and vanish utterly, and always true that they contain within them their own transient awareness, which again is a totally unsatisfying foundation upon which to build a model of stability or immortality. Regardless of which unsatisfying one is implied, it is usually not immediately clear by context which meaning is being sold. The flip side of this, that of the ordinary transient world, is that the mechanism of causality rings on indefinitely. This is an interesting and practical insight-oriented way to look at things. Further, the past is gone, the future hasn't arisen, and the present is transient. So where can time truly be found in all of that? And where in that utter ephemerality can we find something stable enough to say it has truly died or could be destroyed? From the perspective of time and cause and effect, things ripple out into the universe like drops of water cause ripples in a lake. This process, the world and us, has always been empty. If we are anything, it is a pattern of discontinuous rippling sensations arising from causes and effects and leading to causes and effects. Thus, we send ripples of whatever and however we are into the causal future. If we are awakened, that is one aspect of what ripples out into the patterns we call time. And these ripples go on without definable end. Teachings of rebirth are getting at this point in their somewhat problematic way. Thus, we see that there is something to the immortality models, but they are not very helpful for doing insight practices except to produce in us an appreciation of causality, which is no small thing. And appreciating causality directly is extremely important in a moment-to-moment way. That said, I think that the immortality models are much more useful for training in morality, despite their obvious paradigmatic problems, as they can motivate people to behave just as do the basic Christian teachings of heaven and hell, which also exist in the Tibetan Buddhist stages of the path, or Lamrim teachings, but which define heaven and hell not as places, but as states of mind. One great traditional analogy goes as follows. If you lit a candle, then lit another candle, with that candle, then blew out the first one, what is transmitted? This is causality without a permanent entity, resonance without continuity, an artificial but useful recognition of a pattern, and nothing more. Ask a physicist what information is, and you hopefully will get an answer that gets at this basic point. Okay, this section is called the transcendence models. Related to the immortality and bliss models, we have the transcendence models, which essentially promise that you will have the best of both worlds. You will get to be in the world while not of the world, be able to enjoy all pleasant things while being immune to pain and difficulty, and thus live in a protected state of partial selective transcendence. A lot of people try to emulate such a state in their practice. When presented with suffering, they either look away from it or try to make their attention so broad or vague that they don't notice it or really allow it in. And when pleasant things arise, they try to hang on to those experiences and increase or expand them. While this is a perfectly natural thing to do, it is the exact reverse of insight practice. And yet they may deeply feel that this is practicing for the transcendence that they have been promised. As stated earlier, the predictable and obvious truth is that transcendence is bought at the price of a very deep and direct intimacy with life, all of life, both good and bad. Similarly, this deep intimacy with life is bought at the price of transcendence, since the notion of a stable reference point that will be there to hold on to things will finally be gone. While everyone nearly automatically looks to the good side of both, few consider that realization brings a deep, direct experience of all that is painful and the reluctant understanding of how hollow and fleeting pleasure is. We must be careful here, as I don't advocate buying into either extreme. Our ordinary lives have all this already, so don't look for something that is different from what is going on. Instead, examine your life as it is and see the three characteristics of it directly, instant by instant, that this is the gateway to the resolution of the strange paradox that all this is pointing to. Okay, I guess we have a few more minutes. Let's go to the next section, called the extinction models. On the flip side of the immortality models, and somewhat contrary to the transcendence models, we have the extinction models. These are also sold widely in some schools of Buddhism, particularly the Theravada, and essentially promise that insight practices will either have you never be reborn or will make you non-existent in some ordinary sense. The first basic flaw in these models is that they presume an entity to which these things can occur, which from an insight point of view is already a problem. Insight practices at their best presume emptiness as always having been the case, and so to posit that there is something that was reborn flies directly against their root premises. Thus, the notion that there is someone or something who either will not again be born or will somehow cease to exist is absurd. However, page after page, some strains of Buddhism promise that there will be no more coming into any state of being, no more rebirth, no more conventionality or conventionally existing self, and that somehow this will get us off the wheel of suffering. Here we get into as gray an area as it gets in spiritual language. Between the weird promises of the immortality models and the weird promises of the extinction models, we can really get into paradigmatic trouble. We are sure that one of these must somehow be right, or maybe both are, or perhaps neither is, or that some other combination we currently can't conceive of must be the correct one. However, these models are based upon a fundamental flaw, the misperception of sensations, and the conclusion based on this misperception is that there was some isolatable, separate, permanent self, or me, that all these dualistic concepts can apply to. There is not, nor has there ever been, though sensations occur anyway. It is a convenient, practical, working assumption, a convention, a way of speaking, but nothing more. Thus, these curious notions simply do not apply. Simply practicing and perceiving sensations clearly reveals the way out of these paradoxes, and no belief regarding them need be adopted to do this well. Okay, this section is called the love models. On a completely different note, there are the love models. These are hard to relate to any previous category except perhaps the emotional models, but they essentially involve some combination of us loving everyone, feeling love all the time, becoming love itself, being loved by everyone, or some combination of these. The first two are commonly found in various references, such as Sri Nisargadatta Maharaj famous quotation, "Wisdom tells me I am nothing, love tells me I am everything. Between these two my life flows." This is not a bad quotation as quotations go, but it highlights the apparent paradoxes of spiritual understanding. It is basically a restatement of the concepts of balancing the understanding of wisdom and method, emptiness and compassion, and I like it for this reason. However, lots of people think that awakened beings will be radiating love all the time, walking around saying loving things, being profound love for all beings at all times, and the like. Unfortunately, things couldn't be further from the truth. While it does get sometimes easier to take the broader world of beings into consideration, once the center point is seen through, this is very different from walking around in a state of continuous love. Okay, we're going to stop right there and resume right here when we come back tomorrow. Thanks for tuning in today, and have a great day.